we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Bass and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, 8 EST, July 24th, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Cinemasters Reviews. Guys, we made it. Barbenheimer was last weekend. Barbie, Oppenheimer. It was a great weekend for the movies, and those are, of course, going to be the two movies we're going to be reviewing tonight. And joining me to talk about our first movie, that being Barbie, a last-minute guest, but a grade-A man, if I do say so myself. He is the one, the only returning to Cinemasters Reviews, Cameron, the Dr. Redshaw. Cameron, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Payson?
I'm doing well. I just want to say thank you so much. Zach Ford was, of course, going to be here. Wasn't feeling too great. I sent out the signal for another guest, and Cameron was the one to take that signal. I'm always happy to talk movies with you.
Yes. I have big shoes to fill. I definitely won't fill in for Zach's Bombach prowess, but I will do my best. I will do my best.
Doc, you are a perfect human being, but we are going to be moving into our first review for the night, and that being the highest-grossing film of the weekend, highest-grossing film of any weekend in 2023. That is, of course, Barbie, directed by Greta Gerwig and written by her and Noah Baumbach. This is of course, an adaptation of the IP of the Barbie toy, been around since the 50s. We open on this film in Barbie land. Barbie is going through her normal everyday life, and she's starting to get some existential thoughts, starting to think about death. So what does she have to do? She has to go to the real world and figure out what the heck is going on. Doc, I'm going to ask you, what is your history with the IP of Barbie as a whole, and what is your history with Greta Gerwig as a director?
Ooh, the IP of Barbie as a whole. That wasn't something I was prepared to think about. Do you remember? I think it was for the PlayStation 1. It was like a Barbie spy game that was like a Crash Bandicoot ripoff.
I do. I remember that game.
Oh my god. I think other than the dolls, that is my most clear early recollection of Barbie as a property.
That is
I was
fair.
like 6, going over to a friend's house, and they had the Barbie game for, I think they might have had it for PC or something. But no, I very little attachment to Barbie as a property. But Greta Gerwig as a filmmaker, obviously, like a lot of people, saw Lady Bird when it came out. Thought it was great. I wasn't as huge on it as a lot of people were at the time. That's one I definitely owe a rewatch, but definitely up there as far as coming of age, 2010s coming of age movies go. And then Little Women is actually one of my favorite movies like ever. I love Greta Gerwig's Little Women. I just think hopefully Cam isn't watching and say the Pureflix did it first, but the time jumping, going between the timelines, I think was executed perfectly, and it should have won her an Oscar instead of that other guy. But yeah, I think that movie's just it's just so warm. It's just so nice, and then it also rips your heart out and shows it to you at many points. And Saoirse Ronan is a treasure and one of my favorite working actresses. So a little sad that she didn't keep the train going here, but as we'll talk about, some definite standout performances here too. So I'm loving what Greta Gerwig's doing, and I can't wait to see her next movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, my history with Barbie is, of course, kind of a little limited. I just didn't grow up with the toy, obviously. I don't want to speak like just hard on like gender roles, but as a guy, I just was not too familiar with the toys. Shout out to my mom, Nikki Johnson. She was a Barbie fanatic as a kid, and she wanted me to bring that up. She had the Barbie dream house and all. But yeah, like you, I love Greta Gerwig. I'm honestly kind of the opposite on her two films, where Lady Bird to me is one of my favorite movies of the 2010s. That was just a movie that hit me at the perfect time. I just think the character of Christine is such a perfect semblance of just like youth at that time and like what it feels to be a teenager and have like a tricky relationship with your parents, specifically with your mom. And yeah, Little Women is also a movie I also really, really love. I don't love it quite as much as some other people in this community, but it is one that I do want to rewatch. And yeah, that cast is about as perfect as you can get, specifically with Saoirse Ronan and Florence Pugh. I love the jumping of timelines. Eric Roberts says, so is Uncle Mike. Thank you, Uncle Buddy, for letting us know. But yeah, so coming into this movie, most of my hype was coming from the fact that Greta Gerwig was directing this movie. And I will say, from the minute this movie starts, you can tell Gerwig and Baumbach's imprint is not at all underseen in the script. I think this movie, from minute one, has a lot more like clever things than you would think of. Like, I'm just thinking of that first opening narration, where if you saw the teaser trailer, it is the 2001 parody, and you have Helen Mirren's voice saying, Barbie was invented to show that women can solve anything. And this was the thing that solved all of feminism's problems in today's world. At least that's what the Barbies think. What did you think about just like the overall like style and kind of like satirical wit of this movie, Doc?
I loved it. I honestly did not know what to expect going into this movie, because like the trailers, other than the 2001 parody, they don't show much like at all. So like I vaguely knew like what the first act of the movie was, but didn't know much, and I didn't expect it to be so satirical and so self-aware with how the world is. It was, yeah, that opening monologue and just kind of the idealism of Barbie Land and their naivety. It was so like, I don't know, it was great. It was perfect. and just where it goes from there, yeah, I had no idea what to expect. I apologize for the weird sounds going on. I think people are moving in downstairs. Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was great. Helen Mirren as the narrator is wonderful. One of my to avoid spoilers, there's a joke that is purely through narration halfway through the movie that in a lesser film would have just ripped me out of it. I would have rolled my eyes so hard, but it was incredible. And yeah, I love the message of this movie. And yeah, I really love. Yeah, no, the message of this movie sort of being like, look, both the Barbie world from when we first see it, where it's just all dominated by women, and at the same time where with what happens later in the film, where maybe they start to realize in the outside world where like maybe it's a little bit dominated towards men. Neither of those like worldviews are perfect by any means, and maybe a little bit of a combination is sort of what is the correct way. And at the end of the day, we can all aspire to be anything. And I think for a movie that is appealing, even though it is PG-13, to a younger audience, I think that is an important lesson overall. But yeah, like even at like the first few scenes, like something that got me was when Barbie's just driving, when stereotypical Barbie played by Margot Robbie, who is excellent, we will absolutely get to her, when she's just driving and she sees like a pilot up in the sky and she's just like, hey Barbie, and they just both wave like they perfectly see each other. I love those types of jokes. But yeah, just some of the little touches, like how none of them actually like their food isn't actually food. Their drinks aren't actually drinks. It's like they're playing with the props that you would play with them with, and something that like no one in my theater laughed, but I thought it was really funny was when she's first driving her car. She like sees someone and she like waves and she like turns all the way around in her car as she's waving. It's just like not a care in the world. Everything's perfect, and then just yeah, where it goes from there, when she actually like starts to notice things being wrong, it's incredible. It's wonderful.
Let's talk about the cast, because the cast is, in my opinion, like half the reason why this movie works so well is because it is so perfectly cast. Margot Robbie feels like she was born to play Barbie. Like you think of the stereotypical Barbie, Margot Robbie definitely fits that, and she's able to hit those comedic timings, but also hit the very emotional elements this movie does ask her to do, and I think that is excellent. Ryan Gosling absolutely steals the show as Ken. He is the perfect himbo in this movie, playing the like starting out as like this dumb guy who, like, if Barbie doesn't give him the most amount of attention, his day is just ruined, and he's just going through a bunch of stuff. And without spoiling where his character goes in the second half, then coming into the real world and sort of seeing like all the ways his character seems to be worshipped, even though he doesn't have any sort of like education, still just as stupid. I think that's hilarious. America Ferrera kind of brings like the heart as like the one major like human character in this movie with her and her kid. Doc, what do you think about the cast as a whole?
Cast is great. Yeah, Margot Robbie is incredible. When I first heard that the premise of the movie was like a Barbie is like deemed to not be perfect enough or not perfect anymore and then has to leave Barbie land, I was like, why would you cast Margot Robbie as an imperfect Barbie? But she's great, and like as always, she just brings a layer to her character that you wouldn't expect. I think she's been doing great work. She should have been nominated for Babylon, but she's great. But of course, Ryan Gosling steals the show. His play on Ken is not exactly what I expected, because he is kind of a himbo, but at the beginning he's real sad himbo.
He's sad.
He's very desperate, sad himbo, and I felt bad for the himbo. And then, but then when the himbo gains way too much power, I need to stop saying himbo.
Yeah, please,
ask. When he starts to realize what the normal world is like, he doesn't like his change in his character is not like, it doesn't appear out of animosity. He's just like, it's excitement. He's like, it's all the naivety just like going to his head, and just like him just wanting to learn and explore and being just I don't know. It wasn't what I expected, but also like the exact type of scene stealing performance that I expected, that I heard going in. And he's fantastic. He has a song, and his song is great. And how it's implemented in the film is great. But yeah, and America Ferrera, I also think she was very good bringing the heart of the movie. She has actually a really great monologue.
She does
in it. Like again, a theater going experience that would have made me roll my eyes. Some people in the theater started clapping after that monologue, and normally I would be very angry, but I was like, yeah, pretty good.
The whole sentiment around her character of being like, look, sometimes just like aspiring to be just like a normal, ordinary person that just has a family, like that's perfectly okay. And that's why I really did love her character so much. One of the funniest moments with Ken for me was I'm gonna slight spoiler for a line, but it's when he comes back to Barbie Land and he said, when I first came back to the real world, when I first entered the real world, I thought it was ruled by men, and then I thought it was ruled by horses, and then I realized the horse is just the extension of the man, and my whole theater lost it. That line, it's the most random thing. Just Ken's weird obsession with horses he gets when he goes into the real world. And then just like maybe my favorite scene from Margot Robbie in this film, I think everyone's talking about it. There's a point where she is in the real world and she's just sitting on like a bench, and she's finally just allowing herself to finally be sad, because as a Barbie that wasn't programmed into her, and she's just trying to let those emotions go, and she's just people watching all these people in Los Angeles, and she's seeing the different connections. Maybe they're not doing well, and she just looks over at this older woman and just says, "Hey, I just want to let you know you're beautiful." And the older woman's like, "Thank you." And that just felt like a really great moment of humanity, and I don't think you get that if you have a lesser director in the role, personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this movie is like in lesser hands. This could have been a very generic fish out of water story, which I was getting very nervous when they left Barbie Land. That's what it was going to be. I thought they were going to be in the real world like the whole rest of the movie, and I was getting a little nervous, not gonna lie, because I didn't dislike any of the real world stuff, but it would have we've had this fictional character it goes through a portal and ends up in the real world so many times. I'm sick of it. So I love that they like went there, but then they came back with the humans and then all the humans. And it's like, yeah, and very creative. Also the production design and like the transitions to and from the Barbie Land are wonderful. I love those sequences.
I'm definitely going to push back a little bit on not enjoying everything in the real world, because I think that's probably my main complaint with this movie. I was not a fan of the scenes where we actually go to the Mattel Corporation, and with so there's a point in this movie where we learn that because Barbie has entered the real world, it's caused a emergency over at Mattel, and all the executives are panicking. The main one being played by Will Ferrell, and here's the thing. I think the majority of what they're doing is funny, and I think it's written well. But I think the reason why this stuff didn't work so well for me is because it's just as cartoony as the stuff in Barbie Land. Like the stuff in Barbie Land being super over the top and super cartoony, that makes sense because of the world we built up. But we've also built up that this real world is supposed to be like our real world. So when you have Will Ferrell just like wanting to get into tickle fights with his executives, and like just like comical to like an almost annoying degree, that was the point of this movie where I think it kind of did get on my nerves a little. What did you think about Will Ferrell in this film, Doc?
I mean, I'm not a Will Ferrell fan. My two favorite Will Ferrell movies are animated, and so I don't have to see his face. That's not why. But yeah, just his style of comedy season, I'm usually not a big fan of. But I don't hate him, and yeah, maybe it's just that I was expecting everything in the real world to be like more realistic and like that. I was expecting one thing, and then the Mattel stuff gave me something else, and I was like kind of okay with it. I thought it was just gonna be like really corporate, like staunchy douchebags, just like trying to hunt her down, and like the goofiness. I don't know. I didn't mind it. It's like I would agree that's the weakest aspect of the movie. And it might have gone a little far, but I don't know. When all of the guys were chasing around the cubicles, I thought it was kind of funny.
That chase scene was really fun and like really well directed. Like we haven't really seen Greta Gerwig like direct something like to that scale yet, and I think it was really fun seeing her like tackle something that is that big and has so many things going on. So like what I'm trying to say is I do enjoy what I was seeing, but I just felt like it caused a bit of a dissonance like from the narrative as a whole that was being set up that kind of just took me out of the movie. Something that I do think is kind of undeniable with this film are some of the technical aspects, specifically the production design, the costume design, and just the overall like soundtrack of this film, all the original songs that were written for the film. Let's just start with the production design. Like Barbie Land looking as good as it does while also keeping that like artificial look of it. Like it in no way looks like a real world like place that you could actually go visit. But I think that's what makes it so good, is because it looks like a like play place that like you would find in like a little girl's home.
Yeah.
And you can see how the dolls are all just sort of like placed there in like very specific places. Of course, the costumes are great. Barbie was kind of created in a way to sell like different sorts of costumes, and that's very perfectly designed. Doc, what do you think about the production design and the costumes as a whole?
Yeah, just like all the art, whatever arts of this movie, incredible. Barbie Land is just like it's looking at it gave me cavities, and that's exactly what I wanted from it. It's just like, it's exactly when you imagine Barbie Land, that's exactly what it looks like in your head, and it just like come to life. And I didn't expect everything to look like artificial still looking like the toys. Like the cars look like scaled up toys, and like the food is toys, and the waves are toys, and you beach on the toys. All I know is beach. But yeah, it just looks so good. And like I said, I love those transition scenes where it just like cut out. It's like middle school theater like type stuff. It's just wonderful. And seeing it, even though you see it like 4 different times through the movie, it's just wonderful every time, especially when the tandem bike becomes like a 12-person bike with all the corporate cronies. But yeah, it was wonderful. Love the costumes too. Everything Ken wears is iconic, especially in the second half of the movie. He has a sweater at the end of the movie that I want very badly. I think.
Oh God, yeah. I don't want to spoil the sweater, but if that is not licensed by the studio, they are missing a major marketing. Eric Roberts does ask in a very PG way. Thank you for keeping it PG. Date, marry, take home to mom. Barbie, Harley Quinn, Nellie Leroy. Match them up. I think I have my answer, Doc. What would your answer? Would you like me to go first?
I don't like that none of these are kill. It's like I have to do something with all of them.
Yes.
Because 2 of these are a stick of dynamite just waiting to go off.
So my easy answer is you obviously marry Barbie. If you're going to be putting up with one of these every single day, that is easily the one I think you would want to put up with. Take home to mom. I'm probably going to do Nellie Leroy just one night. Just deal with that for one night and just get it over with. And date Harley Quinn. Just go do something by yourself so that way you're not killing anyone. And I think I'm good.
Yeah. I think that's the answer. Like, I can't skew it another way unless like unless I try to fix Nellie Leroy.
You can fix her, Doc. If anyone can, it would be you.
But I'm not taking Harley Quinn home to my mom.
No.
I'm not ready for that conversation. So yeah.
No, but another aspect I love about the world of Barbie, like I'm just so obsessed with Barbie Land in this movie, is like we hear about a weird Barbie played by Kate McKinnon, like living off like as like a big like outsider to this world, and then we just see she's only like maybe like 5 minutes away, like from the entire like land of Barbie Land. She's just on a hill. Kate McKinnon's also wonderful in this film.
Yeah, I don't love Kate McKinnon in a lot of stuff because like she just kind of does her shtick in a lot of things she's put, but I think it works so well here. I think she's great, and yeah, just how close everything is. It's like she's right there. She's right there. Everyone knows her. They call her Weird Barbie, but everyone knows and talks to her, and she helps everyone. It's like, and just the idea of like if you get played with too hard, you become Weird Barbie.
What did you think about the original songs as a whole? Because I believe there are 4. There's I'm Just Ken, which is going to be the big one that I think everyone's going to take away from this film. Probably my favorite one. There's Pink by Lizzo. I believe Billie Eilish recorded one, and one other one. Did the soundtrack work for you?
I love the opening song.
Oh,
like,
so
the
much
opening narration song. I don't know who wrote that because I don't know music. I don't know if that's the Dua Lipa song or whatever.
I believe that's the Lizzo song.
That's the Lizzo song? Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was so fun. And especially on the reprise the second day when things start going wrong and the song reflects it. It was great. It was another thing that like my audience didn't really react to, but I thought was just so clever and fun and original, like for a concept that's kind of been trod over. It just breathe fresh air into it. I'm not one to really like point out like score and soundtrack stuff in a movie on first watch, like right away. But I'm Just Ken is iconic.
Oh yeah.
And again, just how it's used is fantastic. But yeah, I don't remember the other songs, to be completely honest. I think I liked the credit song, but I couldn't tell you a word of it. So.
Fair. No, the image of Ryan Gosling and Simu Liu in that final dance off in like the white background, like that is so incredible. I absolutely love that.
Let's get Bar on here to say that Greta Gerwig should do a musical, because I agree.
Yeah. I am 100% down for that. Doc, before we head into final ratings, is there anything else you want to mention about this movie?
Not particularly. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Especially coming off the movie you're going to talk about next, because I did the Barbenheimer with this second. It was a very a very sweet and very fun, but also like it much deeper and more existential than I expected. Like the message and the themes of it all were not what I expected. I thought it was just going to be kind of a fish out of water story, but done really well because Greta Gerwig. But yeah, all I could say is very pleasantly surprised, and I was already expecting pleasant. So.
No, I completely agree. If I could just mention one last thing, one last cast member. We learn in Barbie Land, everyone is a Barbie, everyone is a Ken, except for one other guy, and that is Alan, played by Michael Cera, who is the most awkward guy in the world, who doesn't understand why he is actually there. I love every single aspect of his character. What did you think about Alan, real quick?
And spoilers, they never explain anything about Alan. He's just there. I love it. I love it so much. There's one part of the movie where he's trying to jump over a fence, and I loved it so much. Michael Cera is wonderful. Also, shout out to Midge. Midge had a few great laughs. Deep cut.
Yeah, famous pregnant Barbie came with an actual child in her. Why they would do that, I do not know. But here at Cinemmaster's Reviews, we do review movies on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, 0 being an absolutely awful film, and 10 being an absolutely incredible film. Doc, if you were to rate Barbie on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, what would you rate it?
I'm a generous man. I'm just kidding. This movie's fantastic. I give it 9. 9 out of 10. It's definitely in my top 10 of the year. It's just squeaking in. But yeah, loved it. Hoping Ryan Gosling gets in at the Oscars. And just all of the Ken at the Oscars, please. Just get Ryan Gosling and the song in, and I will be content. Maybe you can finally give Greta and Noah the screenplay Oscars that they've already deserved. I haven't seen enough Noah to say that definitely. So, but
yeah, I think I'm going to go a little bit higher than you, and I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. I think this was an incredible film. Like you said, it's one of my favorites of the year. Everything from the production to the performances. I also hope Ryan Gosling is nominated for a supporting actor nomination. And unlike with La La Land, please have him perform this song at the Oscar. I think that would be incredible. And like you said, just an incredible, like, heartfelt message at the end that I think all of us can really like get behind. This is not a movie that I think you like only young girls would like. I think people of all ages, if you are open to these types of stories, will really, really enjoy. It's definitely in my top 10, probably just in the area of my top 5. I absolutely loved it. I also did Barbenheimer this weekend. I would probably save this one for the end to sort of end on a slightly lighter mood for the double feature, but that is just me. And yeah, go see this movie.
After Oppenheimer, you might need something to bring you up, and this is the perfect movie for it. I will say I actually don't think this movie's for kids. Like I wouldn't like it's got such a nostalgic nature to it, and the themes are like a lot more adult than I expected. Like I don't kids will have fun, but like it feels like it was designed for people born in the 90s. Like
it definitely seems like the type of family movie you would get in like the 90s or the 2000s, where it definitely does feel a little bit edgier. I don't think there's anything like if your kids saw this, it would completely like scar them for life. But there are some jokes that I think are very clearly meant for adults, and I do think that is important to mention for review. Doc, my next guest is here, so we do have to wrap up this review. But thank you so much for reviewing Barbie tonight. We are going to be heading into our second half of Barbenheimer. But yep, have a great night, Doc. Thank you so much, Redshaw, for joining me to review Barbie. But we are going to be heading into our second review of the night. And joining me for the first time on Cinemaster's reviews, the Big Chill himself, one of the coolest guys in this community, Mark Menchaca. Mark, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm a little bit surprised you called me by the Big Chill. I thought I was just only the Big Chill in, one circle. But it's fine.
Look! A lot of us are from the trivia circle. I called Redshaw Doc. I just said, you know what? You're a very chill guy. I'd like to call you the Big Chill.
Well, he is a doctor, isn't he? So
Oh yes.
I feel like it's a title he has earned.
Absolutely. But we are going to be going into our next review, and that is Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan. This is a biopic / true story on the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who ended up creating the atomic bomb. Mark, this is usually where I would ask people what is their history with the IP, but I'm not going to ask you what is your history with nuclear weapons as a whole. So I'm just going to ask you, what is your history with Christopher Nolan's filmography as a whole?
I love Christopher Nolan. He's probably my favorite director. The Dark Knight is a majorly influential movie for me. It's probably the reason I'm into film as much as I am today. So Nolan is a real cornerstone director for me. I see him as kind of probably the biggest modern filmmaker. Like he's the guy. Like he's kind of the top guy for me.
Yeah, I think the fact that he was even able to take a 3-hour biopic about the man who created the nuclear bomb and open it to $80 million, I think shows you that Nolan is one of those few people that those few filmmakers that still has the ability to open a movie just on his name alone. Like Nolan, like when Nolan releases a film, it feels like an event, and this movie definitely feels like an event. Like you, The Dark Knight was honestly one of the reasons why I became so obsessed with movies. I remember seeing that when I was 10 and just being absolutely blown away. Even the ones I don't enjoy quite as much, like something like Tenet, is still a movie I still think is decent. I just wish it had like a better script, but I never walk away from a Nolan movie and be like, wow, that was badly directed. I think the man just has such a insane technical eye and technical prowess that he adds to every single one of his films, and he absolutely adds that to me with Oppenheimer. The first thing I just want to say about Oppenheimer is for a movie that is 3 hours, I believe, around the dot. I'll check the runtime real quick, but like very close to 3 hours, it flew by for me. And I think it is because it's very much divided into like 3 specific parts of Oppenheimer's life. And each of those segments to me were just as interesting as the last. Mark, was the runtime of this film a struggle for you, or did you also feel like it was pretty well paced?
I have told a lot of people this. I'm very vocal about. I tend to veer away from long films.
Okay.
Like 3 hours. 3 hours is a lot for me, and and this is not decent examples like The Hateful Eight, and I also like Tarantino too. I think every time I watch that movie, it takes 2 sits. Like I never get through that thing in one sitting. It's tough. Although, it's a Nolan film. I'm not really gonna care that much. And the 3-hour runtime did not really bother me at all. And I'm not sure about you, but I was able to watch this movie in IMAX.
Me too. Me too.
Just sitting there, just kind of blown away by the whole thing. And you also kind of mentioned this too, like a little bit. Is like this is kind of like 3 movies. It's like 3 different films, and all of them are fantastic because you got kind of like a, I don't know if this is like spoiler, but you got kind of just like a base. Okay, you just kind of like got a basic kind of, not really basic, but just like a general telling of Oppenheimer's life, and then you kind of have like this almost Ocean's 11 type thing of gathering the scientists to build the atomic bomb. And then you have like this weird courtroom drama that was hidden away from all the marketing.
No, yeah, 100%. Something I did not think about the second half of this movie as like the second third of this movie as like an Ocean's 11 sort of thing. But the more you think about it, yeah, he's literally like assembling these teams of scientists to create the perfect bomb that could help them combat against for the first part of the movie, it's against Germany, and then by the end, they're using it against Japan, of course. It's definitely not as fun as the Ocean's 11 movies, but it definitely does kind of have that feeling that is very interesting. And yeah, like you said, the final third of this movie sort of being like a courtroom drama with whether or not Robert Downey Jr.'s character can sort of go into like this political avenue. I think to me, I thought that was super, super interesting. I know some people weren't the biggest fan of the final 45 minutes. I loved it personally. What did you think? Yeah, I'll just jump in. What did you think about the third act as a whole? Was that sort of like a deal breaker for you, or could you also get into it?
I mean, the third act feels like it, like that feels like the movie to me. To me,
Yeah.
that is because like once, because they build up to, like, just to kind of just go back a little, they build up to, I would say, the big Trinity scene.
Yeah.
Is fantastic, and I think Nolan is able to kind of, even though this is all about building the atomic bomb, he's able to kind of like tone the film in such a way of like kind of getting us in the mindset that no, we're doing this to end the war. This is what we're doing. We're like, and it kind of like digging into the patriotism a little bit, but then after the Trinity scene, things take that turn, and then you can definitely feel the change of emotion of like, oh my god, what have we done? To now trying to change policy to kind of, so that our basically, so we don't add like this crazy weapon to our arsenal again. And I think because there is a moment like with Robert Downey Jr.'s character and Alden Ehrenreich, when everything just kind of changes and you kind of realize what's been happening kind of throughout the movie as we kind of go back and forth. It's just, it is such a great reel. And like, and I think from like, I was almost like, it was almost like where I was kind of at a point like, I don't know, maybe we can end this, and, maybe I'm ready to go, to, okay, now I'm back in. Like, I'm ready to go for like another 40 minutes. And like, and to me, I love that part of the movie. It just, it added a whole nother level I was not expecting to get.
My absolute favorite moment of this film, the Trinity scene, that being the scene where they officially test the nuclear bomb for the first time. I think that's probably the scene most people remember from this movie. I completely understand that. It's directed about as perfectly as you can direct a film. But my favorite scene of this movie is where Oppenheimer, from what I gather, he's kind of giving like a speech to like a graduating class. And for the first time, everything is starting to weigh on his mind of all the lives that the nuclear bombs took in Japan, and just he starts hallucinating. He starts hearing the screams of different people. He literally visualizes like bodies around him. Just the sound design of that. The sound design of this movie is pretty perfect. And honestly, like if you could knock Nolan on a few of his more recent films, I think it's that he just hasn't been able to get sound mixing and dialogue down really perfectly, especially with Tenet and Interstellar. I can tell you from firsthand experience, when I saw those movies in the theater, they were just so blisteringly loud, and I did not have that issue with this movie. But yeah, I think the last 45 minutes of this movie really do make the movie, and I think you really delved into a really great point there, Mark. Let's talk about some of these performances. Cillian Murphy is about as perfect as you could be in this type of role, where it shows that Oppenheimer, he both has sort of like a the character always has sort of like an existential dread to him, but he also has like somewhat of a weird charm where you somehow kind of can't help but get on his side like throughout all of this, and you always like feel the struggle of it. Like Murphy does a great job of showing the internal struggle of Oppenheimer, but he also does a great job of always having you for some reason rooting against him, even when he's not doing maybe the greatest things. So what did you think about Murphy in this film?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't quite think about that, but that's a good way to put it. Where I mean, he's kind of playing like a like a solemn mad scientist
Yeah.
With a hint of James Bond Riz. Like it's
I love that.
like it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, but I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier. I think kind of his moments. I think where Cillian Murphy really shines is kind of I feel like it's those more silent moments, the ones where like where Nolan is just kind of putting the camera on him, and you just kind of see like he feels like a duck in a pond, really, where like just he looks fine, but just under the water. If I steal like a little line from the Replacements, like under the water, those feet are moving a mile a minute. Like he's just kind of going crazy. Like I mean, you point out in that speech scene you're talking about, where I think it's a beautiful mixture of how Nolan directs the scene of kind of taking the sound out of the room and we just hear his voice, and also just kind of focusing just on his face the whole time, and just kind of letting Cillian Murphy do so much of like kind of get it without when seemingly like he's given us very little.
No, yeah, definitely, absolutely. This cast, there are about 100 cast members of this movie. Like that's an exaggeration, but this cast is stacked. Almost every single one of them is great, giving like phenomenal performances. I think Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss, who starts out as Oppenheimer's like scientific partner, is going to be the person that I think everyone remembers throughout the movie, just because I think his relationship with Oppenheimer is definitely the most interesting and the most dynamic as the movie continues to go along. Emily Blunt, who plays Kitty Oppenheimer, his wife, definitely gets her moment to shine towards the end of the film. I think there are a ton of great cast members of this movie. What do you think about Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, and are there any other cast members you really want to spotlight?
Yeah, I think he buried the lead from the masterful performance of Josh Peck, who was sitting there, his hand hovering over the button.
Josh Peck is the one who activates that bomb.
that really is such a weird like I think that's the kind of thing that's gotten me, like it's just kind of the weird people that no
oh yeah David Krumholtz is in this. Josh Hartnett is in this.
Like, what is Drake's brother doing in here? Like, it's so weird. But no, I mean the cast, like it kind of reminds me of how I feel about kind of how like the cast of The Thing, where you feel like you feel like you have like one genuine star that I think kind of is going at, which at the time the thing that wasn't necessarily true, but one like genuine front man, and then you have a bunch of other people just kind of playing a role, and everybody's kind of servicing throughout the entire thing, and in that like you have a lot of people giving like their great performance, but also like not trying to like overdo it, but everybody's like good in their moments. And you mentioned like Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, like Matt Damon. I will say this: I was expecting Matt Damon to have a bit of a bigger role. I think it's mainly because I think probably the marketing was playing up the building of the atomic bomb just a little bit more than, which still got a lot of it, but still was. But I mean, you got to mention the I think the clear standout here, and probably a guy who, yeah, I mean, it's one where like the July release kind of makes me nervous because this feels, because of anybody I think in this cast, this feels like the movie where Robert Downey Jr. should probably get an Oscar for this movie.
100%. Yeah.
I think he's 100% this. And what I kind of love about that performance, and just because like it, mainly him choosing the character, because the guy Stroud, like he's not a great guy. And I think kind of as the movie goes along, you got to realize that he is kind of a terrible person. And it's fun to watch Robert Downey Jr. play that, especially since it feels like every role he's had, even when he's not the best guy, he still has like an air of likableness to him, and there's none of that with Strauss.
No.
And he plays that so well, and I think he just kind of plays it so confidently. Like it's such a great change of pace for Robert Downey Jr. and whenever we get a lot of that courtroom stuff, it's just a lot of the reason why it's great is because of him.
Yeah, as someone like the last thing I saw Robert Downey Jr. in was, I want to say, Doolittle, which was definitely probably a low point in his career. At least I hope he views that as that. And because just Robert Downey Jr., he's been in the MCU for so long, and good on him, he is going to be able to support probably the next 5 generations of his family with that money. But it's so much fun seeing him in just like a full-on drama like this, and like giving a performance like this, because Robert Downey Jr. is one of the best actors I think we have working today, and seeing him play this type of character, I think was really, really excellent. Yeah, also Florence Pugh plays one of the I guess sort of like a lover that Oppenheimer had in college. She's really great at playing these sort of like sultry characters, and I think she does that really, really well. And I just wanted to give her props.
You got Jason Clarke. I want to talk about Jason Clarke. Jason Clarke.
Oh, Jason Clarke. Yeah.
I mean, he, which again, like, I mean, especially, although one of these scenes, I think kind of is driven by Jason Clarke, although it's not necessarily, it's the one where they're talking about his affairs.
Yes.
And, and we got the moment where Emily Blunt has to just kind of, just sit there and just look at stuff. Like, it's honestly, that was such a crazy scene, because like, I'm just not expecting that from a Nolan movie. Like, it's a long time when it's been a really long time since we've seen a genuine hard R moment in a Nolan movie. Like, it feels kind of weird. They just kind of threw it at us.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. The moment where Kitty is visualizing Oppenheimer having the affair right in front of her, and she's visualizing everything, it's just sort of a moment where it's like, whoa, okay, this is happening. But it is a very like well done scene. And I do really, really enjoy that. Yeah, very, very effective. Let's talk about some of the technical aspects of this movie. I think this might be this could very well be one of Nolan's best efforts as a director as a whole. Just the way how he's able to create this tension, not only in the big moments, but in the moments where you just have 2 characters just talking in a room about the severity of everything that is happening, how they have to beat Germany, how this movie kind of feels like a race at points because of how, like, if Germany is able to create this bomb before them, then they are absolutely screwed. And it completely can change the outcome of the war. I think the cinematography done by Hoyt van Hoytema, who I believe has been doing Nolan's, I wrote that name down, I don't quite have that name memorized, who I believe has been doing Nolan's cinematography since, I want to say, since Interstellar. I think it's just perfectly done here. This might be my favorite score by Ludwig Göransson in a Nolan movie. Like, the way how the music just so perfectly underlines so many of these scenes. Like, it's not as loud as some of his other scores, but I think it just perfectly captures like the emotion. Like we've said, during the Trinity scene when the bomb finally goes off and just the sound completely just stops. I remember watching this in the theater, and a pin could have dropped and it would have been heard. The audience was silent at this moment. I think it's just because of how effective it is. What did you think about the direction of this film?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Nolan has been kind of going into an interesting part of his career. I think probably for me, it's like I would probably say this era is probably like his post Dark Knight Rises era.
That's fair.
Where I feel like because I did do a full rewatch of his filmography before I watched this, and the thing I did kind of notice, which just if you go on a minor rant on Dark Knight Rises, where that movie I feel like more like, no matter I kind of think what your problems with it, I think there's plenty. The thing that I think ultimately, at least I have a feeling ultimately bugs Nolan about that movie, it's probably his ugliest film, just as far as
it's fair, yeah.
As far as the technical aspect, where just everything just kind of feels off. Like the action scenes, like don't feel as crisp. Like we see like stunt guys like falling over. Like it's I think it's a movie that I think does genuinely bother him, and I feel like we kind of see that with everything he's done afterwards, where I feel like you can say a lot about him, but as far as they go technically, like Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet,
Yeah.
there's a clear there's almost honestly like some almost manic energy of Nolan trying to perfect that as far as the technical levels, as far as how it's shot and all the effects that go into it and the editing, and it all kind of came here like in Oppenheimer, where everything just kind of feels perfect.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned one of those things being the score, where I mean, I'm one of the like I was one of those guys that was not like honestly not the biggest fan whenever he went from Hans Zimmer to Ludwig, but
Fair.
when going back and listening to Tenet, that Tenet score is amazing.
Yeah,
and then going to here where it is probably Ludwig's best score. Like it is the best score I've heard all year, and I can't imagine there being a better one. I don't know the Oscars well. I don't know if Ludwig has a second Oscar. Does he have a second Oscar? Not.
No.
All right,
No,
this should be his second Oscar.
This should.
This should end this should already end the original score Oscar conversation. But no, I from like, and it kind of goes into this. At least it kind of, I don't know, like it just kind of pushed it into another direction. At least as far as stuff. Like because I feel like Oppenheimer's kind of been looking for, or Nolan has kind of almost been like chasing like this like kind of trying to make like his Oscar movie. I will say this about like in Oppenheimer's case. If Oppenheimer doesn't do it,
that's
nothing's gonna
crazy. Yeah.
Nothing's gonna do it. Like if Oppenheimer is not that big Oscar movie for Nolan that gets him like director and like probably screenplay, maybe like a couple technical stuff or an acting award, like fucking nothing's gonna do it. Like this is the movie if it's gonna happen.
Yeah, Nolan has sort of delved into. I think Dunkirk is probably the closest thing he has delved into like this really like heavy Oscar play. I don't like to use the term Oscar bait when it's good, because I do think this is a good movie. And you can tell his heart is definitely into it. But yeah, I don't see a world where this movie doesn't. I think it at the very least gets him a Best Director win. Like if you were to give this movie one major lock, I think I would be very shocked if Nolan does not pick up his first Best Director win for this movie. And it's not just for me the technical aspects of this film. I think one of my favorite things about this movie is I think you can very clearly tell that Nolan himself is not sure how to view Oppenheimer's legacy as a whole. Because yes, while this movie definitely shows that Oppenheimer was a genius, how he had a very technical, how he had a very sort of like futuristic mind in the way how he was able to craft this bomb, how he may have been maybe a little bit more ethical than some of the people in this room. His lasting impact is always going to be the person that made the most dangerous and deadly weapon that the world has seen thus far. And the movie, I think, does a phenomenal job of leaving you with that thought of, look, because of this man, this has essentially caused the number one fear of death in so many people for the next 80 years going forth. What did you think about how this movie handles the person of Oppenheimer and his legacy? And what did you think about just the world and the person yourself when you were walking out of the theater, Mark?
Well, I mean, the easiest sin a biopic can commit is not showing your subject as a full-fledged person.
Yes.
And not highlighting probably some of their more unlikable characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, at least for the most part, I think this movie doesn't fall into that trap, because like it doesn't show like Oppenheimer's not like a terrible guy, but like he's not like the best guy. I mean, I mean, I wouldn't leave my wife alone with him. Like, yeah, that's for sure. But like, I mean, I think that like there is something where on some end, like he does, where Nolan, I think, does kind of this cool thing where he does want to show that there is some empathy with this character, but I think kind of the way like he splits up the story, kind of, I think we kind of like how it splits up the story between like the objective and the subjective, or you kind of where that's kind of how he split the color and the black and white stuff of trying to show like how other people saw Oppenheimer, and how even though like through his like we're kind of seeing it through his eyes, he's trying to display some empathy and he's trying to make the world a better place. We also have like that scene where Robert Downey Jr. is kind of having that moment where he doesn't think he's going to get that cabinet position, and he's going, well, this is probably just his way of fixing it so that we look like the bad guys and he doesn't look like the bad guy. And it's kind of trying to make us see that maybe this is just some personal goal for Oppenheimer of not being seen as that bad guy. Like it's an interesting way to kind of to even though kind of make us understand, like I think make us understand and make it get inside Oppenheimer's head, but also at the same time maybe asking us to think a little bit more, maybe what's his motives here, and just kind of see him as a real person. And that's just a really cool thing. I mean, maybe like like I do kind of want to say, because I think you mentioned with Redshaw, like I think we all three of us pulled this double feature this weekend of going to the Barbenheimer thing. I went the other way of it. I saw Barbie first.
Okay.
I saw this one, which mainly because I thought I would like this movie better.
Yeah, fair.
Although it is kind of a weird thing. You are kind of walking out of the theater going, man, what the fuck?
Where is society going?
like it's like 10 o'clock at night. I walk into my car. What? Like, is there any hope for us? Like you're just kind of done for the day after watching it.
I mean this in the best way possible. The ending of this movie gives you no hope. The ending of this movie does a phenomenal job at showing how horrible and how terrible of a thing at the end of the day the nuclear bomb is, and how fear is unfortunately kind of justified with just the destructive nature of what it can get into. And yet, just speaking of that ending, that final line that Einstein gives to Oppenheimer during their final interaction, chills. When he's talking about how, look, they're going to invite you to the White House, they're going to shake your hand, and like what that means, it blew me away. Like I know sometimes Nolan movies get a little bit of pushback by maybe not having the best dialogue. I think the dialogue of this film was really, really great, and that scene was that was to me the best dialogue in the movie.
I mean, I feel like which I didn't really think about this till I kind of read more opinions on Nolan, which I think is kind of, because I think it was whenever I listened to like the old Collider reviewers, I think it was Matt Goldberg and Adam Chitwood, and they were talking about Nolan, they would kind of say like he's kind of a cold filmmaker in a way. Like some of his lines of dialogue are kind of like weirdly cold, and honestly, no scene I think illustrates that more than hearing McConaughey and Anne Hathaway talk about love in scientific terms. What a weird fucking moment that is. But I think at least in terms of Oppenheimer, like it fits.
It does.
Like because I mean, there's no other way to end this movie without like this hint of darkness. That even though like this, him, Oppenheimer, and this team built this bomb and for the greater good of the country, he still kind of knew that this was the first domino, and probably eventually, over enough time, this is probably going to be the thing to end the world. Like if it's a human done thing, it's probably going to be something nuclear.
Yeah,
and it's something that he just kind of has to find a way to live with, which is a really chilling thing and a really ballsy way to end your like summer blockbuster film on.
No, absolutely. A movie that, while I do love this movie, tackles this type of tone in a completely different way is Hayao Miyazaki's The Wind Rises, where that movie is about the man who created the plane that was eventually used by the Japanese in World War II. And that movie's that movie's final message is it's kind of trying to say, like, look, regardless of what this man's invention was created to do, he at the end of the day was an artist, and this was his vision. And at the end of the day, that is beautiful that he was able to create this, while this movie has the complete opposite mentality of like, look, what this guy did, it might be like an invention that got the job done at the end of the day, but this is only gonna spell doom for us in the future if like you said, the world is to come to the end by human hands. Mark, is there anything you want to bring up before we head into our final ratings?
Not really. I think we covered most of this stuff. At least as much as feel like we need to be covered for anybody that didn't see Oppenheimer, we can just
I would absolutely agree. Spoke about this earlier. We review movies on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes. 0 is abhorrent. 10 is absolutely incredible. If you were to give this movie a score out of 0 to 10, what would you give it?
Well, I would probably say, as far as at least for me, at least like I kind of have a top 3 in Nolan that I don't think is ever going to be really be broken, of Inception, The Prestige, and Dark Knight. I think Oppenheimer is probably the closest movie to probably maybe do that. It is. I think it's just a massive culmination of everything that he's done. I also preface this, at least on first viewings, I'm very hesitant to go to full send on this one, so I won't, and I'll just give it a 9 out of 10, which
9 out of 10
could be a 10 out of 10. Honestly, on second rewatch, very easy could be by the end of the year.
I apologize for forgetting this. You are a first-time guest. You can go half videotapes. Does that change your score at all?
Oh, if you can add a half a videotape, you can add 9.5 out of 10. We can add
9.5.
There we go.
There we go.
Add a half of the video.
Yeah, just wanted to make that clear when you're talking about it. It could go up to 10. I was like, should probably let him know that he can go that half.
Can you get a quarter of a videotape, or is that too much?
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, you did say you weren't ready to go full send. Honestly, I think I am ready to go full send. I am going to be giving this movie a full 10 out of 10 videotapes. This is now the second movie on Cinemaster's reviews that I've given the full score to, and I think this is easily one of my favorite movies of the year so far, probably in my top 2. It's just one. It does the best thing a movie can do, and that is leave you thinking about the world at the once you're done with the film. Like just how this movie presents the character of J. Robert Oppenheimer and just its complicated feelings, and Nolan just absolutely coming to play in his direction and in his visuals, just making one of the best movies in my opinion, of his filmography. I'm going back and forth personally between this and Inception as to whether or not this is my favorite Nolan movie. I'm going to have to see this one again to see if it does go over Inception, because I do absolutely love Inception. But yeah, I would highly, highly recommend you see this movie. See this in theaters. You saw it in IMAX. I'm guessing you were a big fan of seeing it in that format.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Full immersion. It's Nolan is one of the few guys that will use the IMAX cameras. And he gets everything out of it. It's amazing. Like, if you can go watch it in the biggest screen possible.
Yeah, I completely echo those sentiments. See it in the biggest screen possible. But that does bring us to an end to our Barbenheimer video today. Thank you all for watching Cinemaster's reviews this week. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. We have great new videos coming out every single day. Next week, we're going to be reviewing The Haunted Mansion and Talk to Me, the new A24 horror movie. Already got a guest for Haunted Mansion. Caleb Coho will be returning. So that should be a very, very fun review. I just want to thank Mark once again for joining me on Cinemaster's Reviews. Is there anything you want to plug before we head out for the night?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you plug all the time, or on Multiplex.
Multiplex, great.
Yeah, Multiplex, and I guess I don't know. I feel like nobody knows who I am on Letterboxd. I'm at the boy 7515. Like, if you care to hear weird jokes I make about movies sometimes.
I'm just gonna real quick, because I do remember I was a little confused at the beginning. At the boy 7515. This is Mark Minchuk of Letterboxd, first Letterboxd account I've ever put on the screen. Just wanted to make that clear. Thank you so much, Mark. Once again, thank you so much, Cameron, for joining me for Barbenheimer. We'll all see you next week. And until then, have a great night.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.